now works for SpaceX. Don't say we're about that. But he's been a great resource. And I'd like Kevin to come up and introduce Darrell because he knows him from a while back. And I think it would be appropriate since you last this guy, you introduce him.
Thank you for that pre-introduction. I appreciate it. I actually got a new job at Darrell now, so I don't work at SpaceX anymore.
Okay.
So we're good.
But the cool thing is I feel very safe with Kevin around. And I want to say that I took them both out to lunch, and it was quite a trip because I made sure they faced people, and they just couldn't turn it off. So I found it very fun.
Yeah, so I'm very honored to be here. I'm very grateful for you to be here, Darrell. It's a true pleasure for you to come here and speak about your career as an intelligence officer and to teach us all a little bit about the quiet work that you did and that we did professionally, and how that speaks to who we are as people, the ethics that go along with conducting espionage, and sometimes the moral struggles and things like that. And I was thinking on this a little while ago, and I knew Reverend Cindy has a wonderful speaker series here, and I thought it'd be a beautiful opportunity to introduce maybe an aspect of life and national security in the government that not people are exposed to every day. So thank you very much for being here. Darrell, he retired from the CIA in 2018, and he transitioned from a 32-year career as an intelligence officer, 4 as a U.S. Air Force officer and Soviet military analyst, and 28 at the CIA as an operations officer in the clandestine service. He was born on a military base in Key West and raised on U.S. bases in Italy, Okinawa, and Texas before his father retired from the Air Force and settled the family in Augusta, Georgia. Upon receiving his military commission through the University of Georgia ROTC detachment, he served at Osan in Korea and Bergstrom Air Force in Austin, Texas before his CIA Foreign Service assignments brought him to embassies in Niger, Senegal, Morocco, Nigeria, Uganda, Pakistan, Switzerland, with some time in Somalia in there, shortly after the Black Hawk Down debacle in Mogadishu, and then also Burundi following the Hutu-Tutsi massacres. He's had quite a career and a lot of pivotal moments in history. His CIA career highlights include multiple tours as a station chief, deputy director of the Counterterrorism Center, chief of Africa Division, and chief of the iconic operational training facility, which is actually where we first met for the first time, which I'm sure you don't remember. He was very important at the time, and I was a newbie coming in. Very excited to be at the Clandestine Service Training Center. He was awarded with Distinguished Career Intelligence Medal upon retirement. He was also the recipient of the George H.W. Bush Award for Excellence in Terrorism, and was awarded medals for service in Mogadishu in support of CIA initiatives in Iraq. These journeys along the way included successful manhunts against Panamanian leader General Manuel Noriega, the perpetrators of 9/11, and the U.S. Embassy bombings in Nairobi and Dar es Salaam, and chasing terrorists and enemies of the West across the globe. Darrell is currently an on-air ABC News contributor and subject matter expert on North Korea, Iran, and terrorism. Born and raised in a Baptist home, he began his journey to Judaism in college and included observing Ramadan in 4 Muslim-majority countries in which he served as a CIA officer. His Hebrew name is Judah ben Abraham, chosen as an homage to his past careers after learning the Judah tribe was best known for excelling at intelligence gathering and interpreting signs and being sent out to spy out the land of Canaan. Over the past 6 years, he's grown a strategic crisis management advisory firm, DMB Consulting. So everybody, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Blocker.
So basically, Darrell, you're AKA badass.
I know that's how people see us, but we're your neighbors, your next door, your best friends, your nieces and nephews. We're just we're ordinary people who've been asked to do sometimes extraordinary things. And I never everybody that I was around, if this room was all CIA, we're all doing the same thing, and I never saw it as anything other than, you know, my civic duty. I was a military dependent, Cub Scout, Boy Scout, ROTC, actually Marine Corps ROTC in high school, and then Air Force ROTC at the University of Georgia, where I got commissioned as an officer through the Detachment 160 at the University of Georgia. So all of this was just an extension of my life as I lived it, and CIA wasn't cool to me until I retired, and then it was like, okay, that was, yeah, it was pretty cool. And once you start talking about, once you kind of look at in the aggregate some of the things that you were involved in, Kevin was talking about my first manhunt was as a first lieutenant in the Air Force. I was working at a mobility unit at Bergstrom Air Force Base in Austin, Texas, when Manuel Noriega was, you know, acting a fool, and the word in the street was that he was a former CIA officer. So Air Force guys were really proud about hunting down this rogue CIA guy, and within a year, not even a year later, 10 months after capturing Noriega, I joined the ranks of the clandestine service at the CIA. So what I would like to do, everybody doesn't have the same baseline on understanding what the CIA is and how they fit within the intelligence community writ large, and even beyond that, how they fit into the national security picture. So 1942, actually December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor. Basically, FDR went to a World War I Medal of Honor winner, a guy named Bill Donovan, and said we need to start up a civilian intelligence service. Now, Secret Service will tell you that they existed for about 80 years as a security, civilian security service, but the OSS is largely recognized in our history as being the first. They were made up of a whole bunch of very wealthy and accomplished people, because when we went to war against Germany, Japan, and Italy, we had a lot of businesses that were already serving in these places. A lot of the people that we brought into the agency grew up speaking perfect Italian, perfect German, and some even perfect Japanese. So Bill Donovan and basically recruited everyone from around the world. He recruited second story men. If you don't know what those are cat burglars. He because they use these people to break into embassies abroad and steal their codes and help us, defeat the Axis powers. So the CIA disbanded, or when the war ended in 1945, all these military people who had been pulled out of uniform to help train and set up the OSS were like, I kind of like not wearing uniforms. I kind of like the swagger of being able to go, basically do anything that I want, and I'm not going back to the Army Air Corps. The Air Force was created at the same time that the CIA was. The National Security Act of 1947, 18 September, in fact, 1947, created the National Security Office as we understand it, with the Chief of Staff, the Secretary of State, and all Secretary of War became the Secretary of Defense, and those were the cabinet members that have been advising every POTUS from 1945 to the present. So in 1947 to 2015, the CIA comprised of 4 directorates. Operations, those are the guys that are always in the news. Those are the guys that when something goes wrong, they're the front page and what movies and books are written about. Our analysts, our scientists, and then our support officers. Back in 2014, Director John Brennan, and I had philosophical differences with his changing a paradigm that had existed and done well for 7 decades, and he said that we're living in the most dangerous times in human history. I didn't agree with that. I think, quite frankly, if you look back through war, we might be living in some of the safest times in history of mankind. Anyway, so John Brennan said, okay, I'm going to take portions of the operations directorates and portions of our science and technology, and I'm going to create what is our cyber realm. So the digital innovations directorate was stood up about 10 years ago. So up until 10 years ago, there were 4 directorates, and now there are 5. But essentially, they've been doing the same thing. The CIA only ever does 3 things. Everything else, fake news. Collect intelligence, analyze intelligence, and execute what is known as covert action. 2 of the 3 belong to CIA. The 3rd one belongs to the presidency. The president is the only one, and we're the executor of it, but it doesn't even belong with us. It doesn't begin with us. We're just the ones that have to carry it out, and we've been asked to carry out some crazy things over the years. As a Georgia boy, I think I was really proud of this, and I don't even know why, but Jimmy Carter has signed more well, I don't know about the last month. I think Trump has probably turned out more executive orders, but more covert action related executive orders were signed by Jimmy Carter than any other president in history. Now you think the old peanut farmer, no. We are doing some diabolical stuff all over the planet, and James Earl Carter was privy to it. He was he's a nuclear scientist. The guy was brilliant, and he understood just how dangerous the world could be, and he had this little private secret little army that would do his bidding or help, Lech Walesa as Poland was coming to power, and the Orange Revolution. Everything, by the time you see it hit the newspaper, agency's probably been in there for a long time. My CIA career came because I get asked a lot of questions. I work with foster youth, and I get asked by the kids all the time, do I ever kill anyone? Everybody wants to know if I ever killed anyone. And I said, only with kindness. And they're like, no! And they're like, no, that doesn't count. I'm like, but it does. And then the other question is Area 51. Are there aliens there? And JFK, who assassinated JFK? We don't know. Quite frankly, he died before I was born. I don't care. I'm sorry. I don't care. The mafia was involved, and yes, there were some CIA folks, but the agency has a reputation that has been earned for not always being good arbiters of your taxpayers' dollars and how they're spent. But those are really old stories. When I ran the farm, I'm going to take you through my career. I learned French coming out of the farm, served in 4 French-speaking countries, Niger, Senegal, Morocco, and then Switzerland many years later. My family was with me in all of those places. The only place that my kids couldn't be with me was Pakistan, and that was 2006, 2007. And I did a TEDx. I don't know if the TEDx was on the flyer, but the TEDx was "Listen More, Speak Less: Lessons in Kindness from a CIA Operative." And I'm sure in the Q&A someone's going to ask me, but the bottom line was kindness, which is how my parents expected me to treat everyone, was the difference between a guy who had blood on his hands and who had been responsible for killing our U.S. soldiers and our allies on the Afghan side of the border. But I knew he was more than the worst thing he had ever done. And when they brought him out chained up, hands to the chains, with the chain down to the feet, doing the little prison shuffle, I refused to talk to this guy when he was chained up. I'm not going to talk to someone chained up like an animal. I'm just not going to do it. It's not who I am. It's not who my parents would want me to be. And so I refused to have any more conversation until our Pakistani partners came and took his chains off. And then there was only one setting of tea at the table. I slid it across the table and I poured him tea. If you don't understand the Afghan-Pakistan part of the world, you got to have pleasantries. You don't just come in immediately start firing questions at people. You find out a little bit how they're doing, how their day's doing, how their family's doing. You build rapport, which is huge in my side of the world. Now, this guy's job, and this is not a part of the TED Talk because TED Talk has some really strict rules, but what this guy's job was to identify at-risk youth whose families had sent them to madrasas to get training to become imams in the villages of their own right. And their job was to find one person at each table that was going to be, and these are all children, that was going to be a suicide bomber that was eventually going to be sent across the border. Now, my son will be 35 this year. He was in his senior year of high school in Kampala, Uganda. And as soon as I knew that this beast of a person actually existed, that there was a guy whose job was to identify 8 to 12-year-old children to go kill themselves, he moved up to the top of the list for me. So it took me 8 months to catch him, or us 8 months to catch him. And he wasn't the beast that I thought he was. It's very different when you're sitting down across from someone and you realize that he has children. And we talked about art and history and culture and a whole bunch of things. But the knowledge that I had, and this is also not in the TED Talk, was the universal, he was in trouble with mama at home. So the raid prior to us capturing him, we actually picked up his father-in-law, his nephew, his wife's brother, or his brother-in-law, and one of his lieutenants from the Taliban. But we missed him. We missed the main guy. The phone conversations, we had been tracking for this guy for a while, and then they just stopped translating it. And I'm like, well, why are we not translating these words? And the Pakistanis were like, oh, no, sir. No woman should ever talk to a man like this. And certainly no wife should ever speak to her husband like this. And then I was like, okay, I got to hear what they're saying. And I said, but you don't understand Pashtun. I said, I don't need to understand Pashtun. I can understand tone. Let me tell you, I don't know what she was saying. I know he was quiet. And every now and then, there was probably a word like yes, honey, or yes, dear, in response. But this dude was a stone cold killer, and you know he was afraid of this woman. And so basically I told him, I said, I can fix your problems at home. The only time he ever looked up was when I said that, and he looked at me, and he knew what I meant. Now, this is a culture where you don't acknowledge that they have a mother. You don't acknowledge that they have sisters, wives, or daughters. You do not talk about the women in that culture. You just don't acknowledge them. You don't look at them. You don't smile, none of that. But when he started telling me about his dreams for his daughter and his daughter's future, I saw that as an opening. So I used that to, eventually what I did was I told him, I will release your father-in-law from custody. That will get you out of trouble at home. And he's like, well, how do I know I can believe you? So, well, I'm going to allow you to call your wife, and you'll know that she's not being coerced. So immediately he looks at me, he's like, what about those other two? They're not important. And I leaned forward and I said, just because you said that, I know they are. So he had almost like a little grin in the corner of his mouth. And then I looked at the translator who was sitting behind him, an American citizen of either Afghan or Pakistan descent. I can't remember which guy was with me. I asked him, I said, how do you say pain in the ass? And he kind of got a puzzled look on his face. I said, I know there's not going to be a word for word, but I need the essence of what you're saying to convey to him that I'm holding on. This kid I've never struck anyone in my life. This little kid was pushing every button that he could possibly push with me. And I said, I'm going to hold on to him just because I can, because he's a pain in the ass. Now I want you to picture this guy. I'm not a small dude. This guy was scary big. He starts almost giggling like a little girl to the point he almost fell out of his chair and said, he is a pain in the ass, isn't he? And from there, we were able to talk about a whole bunch of things. What I learned growing up in a military family and growing up in other cultures is that if you listen to what people are saying, if you know what their poets are saying, what they're being taught in school in their history, when you say that to someone from another country, it doesn't matter whether it's Ukraine or whether it's Yugoslavia or whether it's, people are really, really happy when you talk about their culture. So I started dropping lines about some Afghan poet, and he's just like, you know of Afghan poets? Like, yeah, poetry doesn't stop at the borders. And he literally was I think he was intrigued. I think he was tired of being in his cell. And I think I gave him an opportunity to maybe fix some of the things that he knew he was doing that was wrong. And in counterterrorism operations, that's what I've learned, is that you don't stop bin Laden, you don't stop al-Baghdadi and ISIS by talking to people who aren't ISIS or Al-Qaeda. You have to talk to them. A lot of these people are in these positions because they were born into these families. If you're a cop, you're probably going to grow up to be a cop. If your family's lawyers, you're going to be a lawyer. Or a doctor, same thing works on the terrorist side, particularly in some parts of the world. So you have to go in with a non-judgmental approach and just listen. And by listening to this guy, we were able to save. You can't really quantify how many lives you actually saved because you can't really, but I know we did. The reports from the field, he helped us understand how they went about recruiting, where they went, the things that they left the families. So having an understanding of why someone is doing something is just as important as stopping them from doing it sometimes. So Oh, and if you haven't figured out, I'm a talker, and I literally could just talk till everybody fell asleep. But
having you talk.
No.
The purpose of the Faith Lab speaker series is we're on a quest at St. James in 2025 to deepen our faith.
Yes.
And when Kevin came to me and said, we have this opportunity to have you here. Am I on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I thought, how intriguing, because you had converted to Judaism. Mm-hmm. The Old Testament, I sent Darrell an email that listed several examples of spying and espionage in the Bible. Mm-hmm. And I think I caught your attention. Because,
it did.
Because I just kind of listed in Scripture, and said I really would like to hear your take on modern espionage and your faith.
Right.
And how did you have conflicts? I'm sure you were conflicted in what you had to do for your country and how you centered on your faith. So I would like to throw that out as the first question is, did you have these moments where you just felt extremely conflicted? And how in the, modern espionage, what's the rationale, It's always been done. I think you did.
It has. It's always been done. Well, they say that espionage is the second oldest profession, but less reputable than the first. And I've used that line in a lot of talks, and sometimes you get puzzled. Look, it's prostitution. Like, oh, okay, and they figure it out. But what that means to someone like me is that they would rather sell their bodies is more acceptable than selling their souls, which I think people think you're doing when you spy. Spying is kind of a misnomer. I recruit someone who's actually doing the spying. If anybody here is in real estate, location, location, location. In espionage, in HUMINT, it's access, access, access. What does that person have access to? And you're not even really looking at the person. You have a problem set, and then you figure out, oh, I need someone who can do X, Y, and Z. How many people in this community do that? There's only 4 or 5. And of those 4 or 5, 1 or 2 of them is going to be vulnerable to an approach for some reason. We do a lot of studying. We do a lot of looking at people. But the only time where I felt my faith was never shaken. I never doubted the existence of God or the need for people to congregate and share their faith and share their lives. But when people don't need to die, is my point. What's going on in Ukraine? What's going on in Gaza? There's so many different ways of doing things than killing, and I was always the person who was always trying to look for the upside in something, but it got hard towards about 7 or 8 years into the post 9/11, because we were hated in a way that was just really hard for me to see and understand, and we were hated viscerally, and I don't think America quite understood the breadth and depth of anger and hatred that was being poured out to us as a people. I don't think any of it was earned, because I think hatred is just it's a concept that I can't embrace it.
Why did they hate us, do you think?
A lot of it is envy. A lot of it is, even when you're doing good in the world, people know that they couldn't have made it without you, or they couldn't have had food without you. And it's, a sense of pride or a sense of, I don't know, and I've asked, this one guy we caught in Pakistan. It was like the 4th time he had been captured, the first time I ever captured him. So when you catch someone, you run their biometrics, you run their name, like, dude, this is like the 4th time you've been caught. He was from Chechnya. And I said, you're obviously not very good at this. So why do you keep coming here? And he's like, because my dream is to get into Afghanistan and kill as many Americans as I can. That was his response. There was no changing that. That guy was going to be who he was. I knew the country that he was from was a service that didn't treat terrorists the way we treat them. We might not treat them well, but we don't boil them alive. And I hate to be overly graphic, but that is not uncommon. And I saw this man who had spent probably half his life in Russian gulags almost break down and I fought for him not to be sent back to his country. They're like, but he's a terrorist and this is where he's from. And Pakistan didn't want him anymore. I said, but we're sending him to his death. You understand that we're literally sending this man home to die. Say, but he's here to kill us. Like, I get that, but I don't want to be the one having to make a decision knowing that I'm going to send you home to your death. Just not going to do it. But it wasn't my country. He wasn't in my custody, and I lost that battle. And yeah, it was hard. It was very hard. And the general and I had discussions about that one, like screaming discussions. But he was a general, I was a colonel, and it was his country. So I was vastly outnumbered. But even
a moral dilemma.
It was a moral dilemma. Also Pakistan, there was a raid that went wrong, and a little girl who was at a medical facility wasn't able to get medical attention, because when a raid happens, the first thing they do is they separate the men from the women. This was a clinic. There were no female doctors. The male doctors were on one side, and a mom with a sick little girl was on the other side, pleading, please allow one of the doctors to come over here to take care of this child. They didn't. The little girl died, and the response from the Pakistanis was wholly unacceptable to me. When the captain briefed me, and he kind of glossed over, and that's when the baby died, I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Can you back that up, please? And he just was so callous in how he was explaining, and I said, was it a boy or a girl? And he looks at me and he says, what difference does it make? And I looked at him, and I was just crestfallen. I had spent 10 months working with these guys, and I recognized that my moral compass and their moral compass were not the same. And I said, well, I need to know if I'm praying for a little boy or a little girl. And here's what I expect from you. But go ahead and send that message back through someone else, because you're never invited back into this house again. You will never step foot inside of this place as long as I'm here. This is my country. You can't talk to me like that. I said, let me give you the realities of life. Your general's going to take my side. A, because every capture we get is money in their pockets. When those $1 million bounties, we don't get that money. I wish we did. I could have retired a long time ago. That money goes to whoever it was that was helping you find them. And so we were a cash cow because we were highly effective. I knew what I was doing, and I had a great team, and I had a boss who allowed me to go out and do the things that I needed to do, because he knew that I was going to do it with integrity. He knew I was going to do it with character, and he knew I was going to do it in concert with our partners that were there. So basically, I never saw that captain again. I did find out that it was a little girl, and she probably 2007, that was 18 years ago, she would be 19 or 20 years old now. And every now and then I'll walk by a little kid that's maybe from Southwest Asia, even though they might be from Beverly Hills, and it just washes over me, and I remember that sick feeling of being responsible for the death of a little girl. And I take that responsibility. CIA didn't blame me. My boss there didn't blame me. The Pakistanis didn't blame me. But I was the boss. And either you're responsible or you're not. And that one hurt. That one still hurts.
You've covered quite a few, but I want to talk about, kind of, you left in what year?
2018.
So how is the technology and now how do you feel that's progressed as far as like a democratic nation doing spying versus, let's say,
right,
an aggressive nation?
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like the CIA is doing pretty well or pretty prepared, or is it just so imbalanced right now? Give us some security here.
Well, when I joined the intelligence community in coming into the Air Force in January of '87, pre-cell phone, pre-laptops, basically technology, what we call in our business sticks and bricks. Sticks and bricks means you're not leaving a signature, that you can't, some technology that they're going to be able to find. And you just have to rely on creativity. You have to rely on ingenuity. You have to rely on things that aren't electronic, doesn't require electricity or anything. Technology's tough, but technology is a tool. It is a tool. And I never feared it. It just got to the point it was taking over everything. Everybody wanted to focus on the technological side of things. When I focus on the humanity and the humane and the human intelligence aspect of it. I like contrarians. I would much rather spend time with people that I disagree with than people that I agree with. I'm not learning anything from people that I already agree with. We already agree on the same things. What's the point? My thing is to reach out to folks and try, I long ago stopped trying to convince people of what I think is their wrong thinking. But I worked for 6 presidents. I worked for 6 presidential administrations, from Reagan to Trump. It didn't matter who was in the Oval Office. My job didn't change. The same threats that we face today, China, Russia, counterproliferation, counterterrorism, counterintelligence, the same issues where General Donovan fought them back in 1942, and we're fighting them in 2042. It's not going to change. How you go about doing it does. It does get harder and harder to engage and recruit someone. To recruit someone here's what I would do with the students when they join the agency. By raise of hand, how many of you would spy against the United States? Fantastic. No hands went up. So when I ran the farm, I would ask the students who came in with a Hollywood kind of idea of what the CIA was, and they would, I would never spy on the United States. And I said, well, good. That's why we hired you. But now recognize that the people that you're going to be targeting love their countries just as much as we love ours. And you are now going to have to convince people to do exactly what you said you would never do. And just think about how hard it would be to convince you to spy against your club, your culture, your family, your country, whatever it happens to be. It was not an easy thing to do. I was just kind of good at it because I just like people. And being affable and being likable is not a soft skill. It takes work. It takes time. You have to figure out what each person wants. And ego is my, that's, once I find out what your ego issue is, it's only a matter of time before I get you.
Okay, so how's your blood pressure?
I'm good.
Let's talk about what's happening at the CIA today.
What's happening at the CIA today?
What's your heart and soul telling you right now? Because I talked to you on Monday, and you were going on the air.
Oh, yes.
And you were pretty hot. And I remember saying, you may want to tone it down there, Darrell.
So it takes, by my measure, about 8 years to create an intelligence officer from the time they join, go through training, and go through at least what I call 3 tours. All of our assignments are 2 years with the opportunity to extend for a 3rd year if you're doing well, and if there's a bunch of factors that go in. But every 2 years you would move. So about the 8-year point is when you got it. You understand it because you've done it in different cultures, maybe even in different languages, and there's no way to fast track that. It's like driving. If you have any actuaries in here, you know what? You can get a learner's permit at 15, you can get your license at 16, but you can't rent a car until you're 25. You know why? Because you are a shitty driver for the first 10 years. You are. I mean, it's proven time and again. And excuse my language, you're just not a good driver. And it doesn't matter even if you think you're good, when you have a human being's life in your hand, and that's really what it boils down to, is someone has trusted you enough to say, I will give you that piece of information that you need, even though it's not in my best interest. It's in the greater interest. It's in the interest of the greater good, and that was always my perspective. I never asked anyone to do anything that I knew was. Murphy gets a vote too, so things do go wrong, but tradecraft works. And tradecraft is what they teach you at the farm, and it helps you protect that person from, from getting caught, and helps you from getting caught. And I used to say we're a step ahead. We're like inches ahead of everybody else now. The technology is, but what's happening at CIA and what's happening across the government writ large is unprecedented, unnecessary, especially now. He has 4 years to get rid of people. And there are a lot of people who don't need to be in the government. There is a lot of waste, but no one can tell me that 13,700 of the 14,000 people who have been out there serving side by side with our troops and our intelligence officers in some of the worst places on this planet don't deserve some semblance of respect. And coming from Africa, where I spent the lion's share of my career, AID is feeding 1% is our AID budget, and it feeds 43% of the programs in the world. People are dying, and people will continue to die. And other places are going to have to step up. That is a thing. But we've been, and the thing is, you start firing CIA officers, it's going to take 8 years to replace that guy. Just like if you're a doctor, you go through medical school and then all of a sudden you're gone, you're like, oh, we'll make you a doctor. No, you're not. It's going to take a long time to make that person a doctor. It's going to take a long time to make that person a well-trained and secure officer who is going to trust and put that life in someone's hand. For me, every time my officers went out, because of the stress that they're under, the last thing that I would say to them when they walked out the door is, don't forget to have fun. And the first time I started saying it, they're like, I'm like, if this isn't fun to you, you need to do something else. This is hard enough for people who really want to do it. I loved my work. I loved everything about it. Not as many people are leaving as they're saying at CIA. I'm talking to people who are on the inside. I'm talking about people who are at the farm, and it's a mess because it's just mass confusion right now. Nobody knows what's going on. Like, listen, he's been saying for 2 years what he was going to do. And I said this on ABC yesterday. Why is everyone surprised? Don't be surprised by anything he does. Please look for results. And if he doesn't have the results that he's saying, then that's how you measure him. Forget the rhetoric. He is not going to change. He's never going to change. Nothing we're going to do is ever going to change who he is. I'm not in the business of changing people. I'm not in the business of standing up for any president, whether it's Trump, Biden, Obama, or all the way back to Reagan. That was not my role. My role was to tell the president and the policymakers what they needed to hear, but not what they wanted to hear. And trust me, they almost never wanted to hear what we had to say. Almost ever. I remember when one of the jobs that I had as deputy director CTC it was an impossible task. And we had been talking off and on with NSA, all of our partners, the 16 partners with the intelligence community. It was 16 for and 0 against. And Obama's team was like, I'll go back to the drawing board. And I said, I will not. We are not going to talk about this anymore. We need to brief. These are the five scenarios. And well, we can't go in and brief the president. I said, so you want me to do my job and your job? I said that to Tony Blinken. And Lisa Monaco and Jen Easterly. That was Biden's counterterrorism team. They were the ones that was leading the entire government effort. And these people, they're academics. They're people who are theorists. I get things done. I don't have time for people who are going to sit around and study a problem set so many times that it's just, people are dying. And I told them, you understand, every time we go back and talk about this, there are people's lives are lost. Literally, people are dying. Yeah, but they're not Americans. And I'm like, you know what? It's that type of attitude and it's that type of approach that is why people hate us. That is like the worst thing you can say about. How is anyone's life any more or less important than mine? It's not. And if somebody says, oh, it's okay to kill him because he's a guy, or he's black, or he's Jewish, or he's an American. No, that's just wrong thinking. And I was not having it. And I fought a lot. I fought a lot because I stood up against people who I thought were losing a sense of their humanity. So it did happen at the agency.
Right there,
and
your
it
moral
happened.
upbringing.
You know, two things are almost never discussed at the agency. Politics and religion. They're just not. Sex, whole different thing. It is a patent place. It is a patent place. I had one of my students. Who's actually got a chapter in Liza Mundy's last book on women of the CIA, and Molly shared with me all the goings on of the students when she was a student going through the farm. I was like, I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear any of it. She said, oh yeah, boss. Car meetings turned into, it was just, anyway, it happens. So sex is talked about, but not religion and not politics. Not once in 28 years did I ever have any conversation under any administration that was politically charged or, oh my God, the president isn't. We don't care what the president likes. We have data-driven information, and we're telling you the facts that we know, and people think that it's just CIA. It's not. The intelligence community is all 194 members of the United Nations has the CIA equivalent, an FBI equivalent, a Homeland Security equivalent, border control equivalent, and they're all out there collecting at the same time we are, and they feed it all back to us a lot of times. So when the CIA assessment is done, every person in here has, every one of you is from a different country serving your CIA, and we're all collecting, and sometimes it all gets back into a collective note. So you can disregard what CIA is saying about something, but it's more than CIA, because guess what? The Brits are collecting on it, Canadians, the Kiwis, Venezuelans. So just because we stopped doing something doesn't mean the rest of the world is. Under Obama, they found out we were spying on Angela Merkel. Oh my God, the world lost its mind. Don't you know that Obama, every time he crossed any border, he was being spied on? That's just but Mr. President, that's kind of what we do. We're not having it. And like, okay, if you think the Germans or anybody else is going to stop spying on us, that's fine. But we're going to be the only ones who aren't doing it?
Right.
That's just crazy talk. But it was, and we stopped.
I'm going to open it up to you all for questions. I think, we got a hand up already. We have a runner with a microphone. I have one more question. Have you ever caught a double agent?
I was just going to say, when you start, there's no off-limits questions. Whatever you feel comfortable asking, I will do my best to answer, and as truthfully and as openly as I can.
Gentlemen at the...
I'm just curious if USAID, and I realize there's all kinds of relationships and things that go on internationally and stuff, but is USAID and their affiliated businesses, do you know all those guys? Do you kind of work? Do you guys kind of know?
Absolutely. So within each embassy is the ambassador's country team. So the country team is made up of the heads of each of the different agencies. In bigger places, they might have an FBI presence, but mostly it's CIA, State Department, AID, Peace Corps, And there might be some others, but
Are those guys helping you do your job?
oh no, we.
Part of a bigger thing?
It's so if you look at our kind of our foreign presence, if you look at it as like a tripod, our defense, our intelligence, and our development, we've just kicked one leg out from under the stool. That influence that we had that got us into a lot of places in the world where they aren't really accepting of Americans, now all those doors are closed. Now all these places where we used to have access to find this guy who might be able to tell us what ISIS is doing, that's over. Those days are gone. And if you think that an asset is going to work for, I was going to tell a story, but I don't know if I can share that. But yes.
Oh, go ahead. Come
yes,
on.
Yes. Hey, no. I'm.
Do it.
Okay, you might not like it. So, the month that President Trump came into office in 2017, we had just recruited a source that was from the Middle East. This source was actually deployed on behalf of CIA, and I'll just say she was in Iran, okay? Doing really good things for us. This was a person who risked her life for our country and gets stopped at LAX and treated like she is the enemy. Seriously? Our guy going into the most dangerous place on this planet, and we're going to treat them like that the Islamic ban, the Muslim ban, hurt us really, really bad. Because all those services that were the Jordanians, we're partnered with the Jordanians, we're partnered with the Lebanese. Every country that we're in, we're partnering with them inside the country. We're not in North Korea. We're not in, well, we're back in Syria, but Syria is a special case. But every Arab country that you can think of, you all know Qatar. Everybody says, oh, the Qataris, they're the ones that have been funding Hamas. Okay, Qatar went in because the West and the United States asked them to go in because we still operate from the premise that we don't talk to terrorists. Well, that's all I did for 25 of my 28 years. So people say we don't talk to terrorists. Don't believe that at all for a second because it ain't true. Negotiating with them, I wouldn't say we negotiated because when you negotiate from a sense of strength, I let them think they actually have a choice, and you kind of, what do they call it, persuasion, as opposed to persuasion. Yeah, that was a really long. Yes, AID folks are also diplomats. They're traveling on diplomatic passports, and their uniform might be Birkenstocks and shorts. But trust me, if you talk to the military guys who have served with them in the field, they know that what they're doing out there is God's work, truly God's work, feeding the most helpless people on this planet and helping people in places where they've been forgotten by their own people, but not by us until the last month.
A couple of questions over here, Matt.
Here we go.
We're using a microphone 'cause
I have
we're
several, but
recording.
I'll try to keep it. There's an ugly history with the CIA.
There is indeed.
Yeah, I guess that's my first question. Knowing that, especially Latin America with overthrow of democratically elected people.
Yes.
Given that history, I wondered how you sat with that with your choice of this
Right.
career.
So, again, as I mentioned, that history in the 40s and 50s, we were subverting governments. I'm telling you, when I came on, I wish we could overthrow governments. There are governments who need to be overthrown. We can't do it anymore. It just doesn't happen. One of the hardest questions I was ever asked was, I was at a historically black college and university on a recruiting, or at a career fair, And we were the corner booth, and this one young black man kept walking by and kind of looking, but he never approached the table. So the crowd died down. I invited him over, and no, nice to meet you, or hello. How could you work for an organization that did experiments on black people? Like, wow. I've been asked some doozies in my day, but that one still has me reeling. And I say, you know what? You're right. But that happened before I was born. Okay? That's not happening. Well, how do we know it's not happening? I said, because now people like me are on the inside. We're not going to allow that to happen. This is not the 1930s, 40s, and 50s. It's just not the same. Are there people out there doing things that they shouldn't be doing? Probably. Are they doing them on the scale of what you think is the way Hollywood depicts them? No, it's not. That's entertainment. I love entertainment. I love all these shows. But it's not real. And you're right. We were not friends of Latin America. We just weren't. Those same Latin American countries today, if they had to choose between following Russia or China, United States, 10 out of 10, even the Venezuelans and the Cubans are going to pick us. You know why? Because the United States has not lost its place in the world. This is what I call consular diplomacy. Outside of our consulates and embassies around the world are lines and lines of people trying to get here just to visit, just to come here for school. When those lines die down, we're in trouble. Nobody is dying to get into Russia. Nobody is dying to get into Beijing. Nobody is coming across the border. Whatever you think about our southern border, that is a sign that people still see us as a beacon of hope, as a way of trying to get away from really bad situations. And again, politics is not my suit. It's not what I do. But wrong and right, there's wrong and right. If you don't think wrong and right exists, then we will have a different conversation. Treating people and calling them and lumping all people as criminals or whatever, it's just wrong. It's not true, and it's unhelpful. And what you're doing is creating more people who dislike you. My job was to de-escalate. I probably sat in a room, I never had this many terrorists in one room at one time, but collectively, this is about maybe a third or a half of all the people that in my 25 of 28 years at CIA, maybe 5 or 6 of them were horrible people. I'm talking about really horrible people. Now, my scale of horrible and compared to yours might be a little different. But the TEDx, the subject of my TEDx, when I asked him, why are you doing this? He said, because Karzai lied to us. Not once, not twice, but every time. And basically my people got fed up, and I said, you know what? We're gonna pack up, and we're gonna move to Pakistan, and we're gonna take up arms against this Afghan government and anybody who's standing between us and them. And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I'd probably be doing that too. So you just, right and wrong is different from different perspectives, but most people do know the difference between right and wrong, even terrorists. And I've seen terrorists balk. So we don't kill children, we don't kill women. Okay, good. Maybe not killing anyone, but if you're gonna have, but start with something. I can live with someone who says, yeah, we don't do this. Okay, well, how about maybe adding everybody to that? Just, that type of thing.
My understanding is that when the CIA was set up, it was to deal only in foreign countries, where the
Yes.
FBI was supposed to do domestically. And I have the impression that that line has gotten fuzzy.
The line got fuzzy during Watergate when a couple of our technical officers were pulled in to be involved. This is a tricky one. So the clandestine arm, or the domestic arm of the clandestine service, used to be called NR, National Resources, and now it's called Public Engagement or something like that. This is something that pre-existed even OSS. At the beginning where I talked about we had factories in Italy, we had factories in Japan, we had factories in Germany. Those same people who were I just lost my thread. Oh, and so Donovan recognized that if he talks to corporate America, we know what ball bearing how many ball bearings are coming out of this company because they partnered with an American company. So NR actually was this private kind of public sector entity that was drawn into the OSS to help with the war effort, that became a part of the Directorate of Plans, was the old school Directorate of Operations. It changed names in the late 50s, I think early 60s. But we do have a domestic presence, but we don't spy on Americans. We don't. We never have. We never will. It's not what we do. That's what police states do. That's what the Stasi does. That's what the KGB does. That's what mukhabarat. Mukhabarat is just Arabic for intelligence services. But CIA doesn't have arrest powers, and CIA is only focused on those foreign nationals who are in the United States. If you know the number of Chinese that we have on any college campus on any given day, hundreds of thousands of them. And a lot of them are taking up disciplines and going back and creating submarines and satellites and doing things. So my job is to identify those students, recruit those students so that when they go back in, they'll really be reporting back to us. So that's what the CIA is doing domestically. And we do it in partnership with the Bureau has the lead domestically. We have the lead OCONUS outside of the continental United States. But yes, we do have, if you just pick the major cities, New York, Miami, Chicago, LA, we don't have stations in every city in the United States, but we have coverage because we talk to startups, we talk to business, we talk to universities. Hollywood was one of the folks that I reached out to because guess what? They have film crews and they have people who are traveling all over this planet, including in the places that we'd love to get into that. And so we don't put anyone in their crew because that will make everybody else suspect, but we debrief them when they come out. So it's more of a passive collection of intelligence that we're doing domestically. So no lines crossed.
Got one?
Yes, thank you for coming tonight. I'm sure we all appreciate it, and it's both
Glad
informational and entertaining as well.
Thank you.
The question I had for you, it's kind of an old question, but it may be more for NSA versus CIA. Mm-hmm. But how damaging was Snowden?
So the question was, how damaging was Ed Snowden? Ed Snowden probably was the single most, he revealed more information than any other person who's ever turned traitor against the United States. Ed worked for me in Switzerland. I am the reason that Ed was no longer CIA and got pushed out. The man has an ego. The man has a sense of entitlement that me and my boss were really uncomfortable with, and he did something really stupid out there that I now know is what the skill that he learned inside of CIA is what he took with him to his job, the NSA job that he had through one of the Beltway bandits, and was able to go in and get access to things. He He was an IT guy. He was a system administrator. He knew how to manipulate things. And once he started realizing that he had this power, it got to his head, and I think he got out over his skis, as they say in Switzerland. And now he's a Russian citizen. But he hurt us really badly. Yes. Some people think he's a hero. I know, Ed, he's not a hero at all.
Good question. Who's next?
Question. Great talk.
Thanks.
So with Putin and Zelensky, the Ukraine, Russia, how does this end? What are we looking at? Are we going to go, is there going to be a new Soviet Union again? Is Putin that hell-bent to get that Eastern Bloc back together? What do you think happens? And now with Trump in there, why does Trump seem to bow down to Putin?
I'm going to touch everything except for that last part. Having handled assets before, I think handling Donald Trump would be the worst asset in the history of mankind to handle. That's why I don't think he is an actual Russian spy. Do I think Putin and the KGB know something about him that he doesn't want to get out? Absolutely. They know things about me that I probably don't want to get out either, but I'm not the president of the United States, so they're not blackmailing me. On the 24th, which is Monday, Putin's 3-day special military operation is going to hit the 3-year point. I think that by virtue of the fact that he's had to rely on the Iranians for drones is an implicit or tacit acceptance of the fact that they're not as good as they think they are. The fact that he has North Korean soldiers, the fact that he has to go to outside sources even just to maintain what they're doing. And he doesn't have anybody putting parameters on him. We put handcuffs on the Ukrainians. We're stopping them from launching into Russia. I don't make any right, wrong, or indifferent. I think indiscriminate shooting of buildings and killing people that don't have anything to do with the battle is the wrong way to go. But it is going to end. All wars end. The Ethiopian Eritrea, I think, was the longest civil war when I walked in the door. They signed peace treaties. Sudan was in the longest civil war, which was 25 years. They came to terms. East Timor came to terms. They're going to come to terms. Russia invaded 11 years ago, not 3 years ago, 2014. And I was actually asked on air, and I was actually proud of the fact that I was able to drop a Maya Angelou quote on national TV. But the question was, and this was within a month of Putin coming across the border, said, well, why now? Why did Putin decide to come across the border now? I said, because the world didn't heed Maya Angelou's word. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. And I went from 2004, which, does anybody remember the Breslin school incident? The Chechens had taken over a boarding school, and they were in the gymnasium. Well, the guy who was the head of the KGB that came up with the response was, the idea is, okay, there's only 6 of us in here who are the Chechens. The rest of us are children and the teachers and the staff protecting these kids. And Putin's response was to go in and kill everybody, which is what he did. And that was a success to him because the Chechens were killed. He doesn't care that 90 other people that were innocent got killed. His job was to get rid of the Chechens. So to Putin, bravo, I did a good thing. 2004, 2008 when they attacked Georgia, 2011 when they rolled into the Crimea. In 2014, what they were doing in Syria If you don't know what they were doing in Syria between 2013 and 2016, just go in and look. They were literally killing entire villages of people because they could. They were testing out new weapons. The guy is not going to stop. Do you think but he can't beat Ukraine by himself. Do you think he can take on the rest of NATO? Even if the United States isn't there? No, he can't. He can't win. Now, he has nukes. That's the problem. That's the problem.
Why won't we let Ukraine into NATO?
It was a promise that was made back. So when the Soviet Union was breaking apart in the 90 to 93 timeframe, 91 is what everybody, there were agreements when we were talking about nuclear. There was a whole bunch of denuclearization that was going on at that time. And all these former Warsaw Pact countries were tasting democracy for the first time. And I believe the agreement between, it was either the Clinton administration, I think it was the Clinton administration, was that Ukraine was not going to be a member of NATO. I don't think they need to be a member of NATO. They're not a member of NATO now, and NATO countries have already stepped up to protect them. And it's one of those things that Putin's already said that's his, that's
line in the sand.
That's his line in the sand. That's a difficult one. I'm not sure they need. I'm not sure they need to be a part of NATO, or if we should allow them to be a part of NATO. Unless NATO's ready to go to war, and unless they're ready to fight without our backing, then that's one thing that Zelensky might have to eat crow on that one.
Yeah, I think he has. I mean, I think that some of the talk now is making him like a Switzerland. Mm-hmm. So.
That would be best. Yeah. Even though the Swiss are neutral. I lived there for 3 years. They ain't neutral.
Is anyone neutral? I don't think so.
Yes, ma'am.
If I can ask a question, that'd be awesome.
How does it end? You didn't say that yet. You said
It's
but how does it end? And then past history, there were like 30-year wars in Europe.
Oh, there was a 100-year war. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But not in the modern era.
How does it end?
It ends with Russia being back in the G8. It ends with Putin. Putin's going to have to take some concessions as well. I don't know what they're going to be, but he will. He's a negotiator. And once he realizes that he can't take on the entire world, which is kind of what he's been doing for 3 years, it hasn't ended well for him. He's lucky to be alive. And he's killed everybody that's in opposition to him. But I can tell you, the Prigozhin guys, the Wagner guys, they haven't forgot what he did to their leader. Trust me. I think Putin's days have been numbered for a long time, and he knows it too. He's, you see when he sits at a table, he's here and everybody else is back against the wall. He is literally as far away from anybody as he can possibly get. So, and he's being tracked by every intelligence service on the planet. I'm going to say it's going to end in 2025. It's going to end. So, that CIA guy, he didn't know what he was talking about. Yes, Miss Jen.
Last question.
Okay.
Okay. First of all, on behalf of everyone here, thank you for your service. Yes. I talked to you a bit. I'm an Army brat myself, and I do feel the entire country needs to get behind public servants.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Amen.
I do feel that there are ethics and morality in espionage. Mm-hmm. I think some countries more than others.
Yes.
I don't feel like we are poisoning people on a bench.
No.
hopefully.
No, we're not.
So I do feel like there are espionage rules, which is a, very long conversation. Would you agree that, we're talking about Ukraine and Russia, but I think China is our biggest enemy at this point. Do you agree?
I don't, and I'll tell you
Okay.
why. And my friends who are Chinese speakers who have been chasing the Chinese target for 30 years think I'm crazy.
Because I was going to ask you
What?
about the London mega embassy going in from China.
Well, I'll tell you why I don't think China. I think we're at an inflection point, almost a Mao Nixon type of thing in the early 70s. Oh, we can't talk to China. Well, Nixon was like, you know what, Kissinger, let's go see if we can make this work. China does not like Russia. They've never liked Russia. The Silk Road problem is a problem for Putin. These guys do not, no matter what you see, they will stab each other in the back very quickly. If she had to choose between aligning with the United States or aligning with Russia, I think we could do that. I think he doesn't want to go to war over Taiwan. They could take Taiwan tomorrow and there's nothing we could do about it. Nothing. They're like, it's like not even a half a mile from China to the Taiwan Straits. They could take it tomorrow, but they don't for a couple of reasons. Their economy is hugely based on the same chips that the rest of the world needs, and the lion's share are coming out of Taiwan. They don't want to disrupt that. There's not a single military officer in the Chinese army who's ever been to war. They've never fought anybody. The last fight that they got into was a skirmish with the Indian army on the border near Nepal, and people got killed on both sides, and they thought the world was going to come to war, but we were listening to the Chinese comms, and let me tell you, they ain't ready. They're absolutely not ready. They want to be technologically advanced. They want to be accepted as being, a world power. But until she can take criticism, there's no U.S. president who just doesn't get lambasted around the world. You say one thing bad about Xi, and everyone or that person knows could be killed. And don't wear Winnie the Pooh. If you go to China, don't try to be funny. It ain't good. He outlawed Winnie the Pooh. How do you outlaw Winnie the Pooh? Seriously, how can you be such a grown man running a country and someone compares you to Winnie the Pooh? I kind of look like Winnie the Pooh. That's all right. He was fantastic. Until China can take criticism, until they can step up and be replace us as the world power, as the people that go to. They don't have Coke. They don't have Pepsi. They don't have jeans. They don't have the NBA. They don't have these things. I'm telling you, these things absolutely matter. Name one product coming out of, don't say TikTok. Okay, I'm about to say, name one product coming out of China that the world is just, dying and nobody else can give it to them. Yeah, they didn't come from China. They came, now they're made there. No, I'm talking about something that the Chinese created besides COVID, that the rest, that the rest of the world is clamoring, to be a part of. It just doesn't exist. It doesn't. Fentanyl, oh my. Yes. Yeah, I'm flying to Greece in the morning.
So we're going to thank you because someone bought you a Spies of the Bible.
I saw that. Spies of the Bible. This is fantastic.
And then,
Did y'all see the cake before it got cut? Man, that was cool. Oh my goodness, that's a chunk of.
all right, and so I hesitate mugging you because you're CIA. We mug and kiss.
Excellent. Mug and kiss. That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
For being here.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I do. Thank
Such
you.
a blessing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I love talking to folks. You can find me on LinkedIn. I answer any question you have, I will answer until I can no longer breathe. I love what I do. Our country is as safe as the people who step up and volunteer to go out and do the things we do, whether you're military, CIA, or AID. So, on that note, thank you all. And I'll stand around and answer more questions.